All right, good evening. Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting in Saratoga Springs. This is Thursday, June 8th, 2017. We are going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we've asked Samuel if he would lead us in the pledge. We'll turn the time over to you, Samuel. Thank you, Samuel. All right, let's have roll call. Start at this end. Commissioner Steele.
Sandra Steele.
Troy Cunningham.
David Funk.
Kirk Wilkins.
Ken Kilgore.
Brian Chapman.
All right.
Kevin Thurman.
Jeff Adderman.
Kimberly Gaberzak.
And we have a quorum. And Mark Christensen. Thank you. All right, this is a public meeting for Saratoga Springs, so we would like to open up for public comment. Any ideas or concerns or thoughts that you might have for the city that are not on the agenda tonight. So we're going to go ahead and open up public comment at this time. All right, given that we don't have any public comment, we will close public input at this time, and we'll move on to business item 4. This is a concept plan in a PUD for Peak Square Retail located approximately 19 to 21 West Sargent Court. Nathan Smith is our applicant, and we'll turn the time over to Jeff Adderman for our presentation.
Thank you. Well, as you said, Peak Square Retail is a concept plan. It will contain a medical office and multiple retail and possibly other office spaces. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. No, that's okay. No problem. This plan is proposed on 2 lots in the Sargent Court development. On the west side of Redwood Road, and it's just north of the Walmart and also immediately north of the town storage facility. And because this is in a PUD, informal concept level feedback is required from the Planning Commission and from the City Council. This is the concept site plan. The project spans across 2 lots that are within the Sargent Court development, and the lot line can be seen crossing across the building kind of toward the north end of it, and north is up in this image. And a plat amendment is currently being processed in order to combine these lots for this project. There is also a strip of land to the east running along Redwood Road where the Redwood Trail is running. And this land was dedicated to the city in the past, but it is being given back to the owner now, and it will have an easement on it for the city. Plat amendment is also being processed concurrently with the site plan in order to incorporate this strip of land into the development and make all 3 of these into one larger lot. 58 parking stalls are required with this development, and depending on the actual future uses, and 63 are currently proposed with the concept plan. 3 of those are ADA stalls, and that meets the requirement, and they are all van accessible. Access to this development will be provided both from the north, from Sargent Court Drive, and also from the west on Guardian Drive. This is the landscape plan for the development, and landscape requirements are being met with this. These are some renderings of the Peak Square Retail building. The front elevation shown here is facing to the west toward the parking lot. and the rear elevation is facing east toward Redwood Road. In addition to the review checklist included in the staff report, these are the comments for the project from the Development Review Committee. And this is a public meeting, and staff recommends that the Planning Commission discuss the application and provide informal concept level feedback to the applicant in preparation for site plan approvals. And, oh yes, our applicant is here to help with answering any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you for that presentation. Would the applicant like to come forward and join us at the table here? You can have a seat and make yourself comfortable. For the record, would you tell us your name and address?
Nathan Smith. My residence is 6542 Deer Hollow Way in Highland.
Thank you, Nathan. Did you want to add anything to the presentation?
No, as we continue through the process, the elevations have changed a little bit, but that's the general concept is still there.
And
The elevations have changed. By the way, this is Preston Soka. I'm with the general contractor. We've been working with the architect. The elevations changed to better conform to the city requirements of the elevation differences between glass and different finishes.
okay, great. Did you have any other comments that you wanted to make?
I don't think so. We're excited to be here. Having our pediatric dental office right down here. This is going to be for an orthodontist office for my brother. Yeah.
Okay, great. Now, Kimber, as a point of procedure, since no action is required on this, do we still open up for public comment? Okay, great. So we're going to open up the time now to the Planning Commission for comment on item number 4. Do we have any comments?
I just had a couple of questions. For instance, in the staff presentation, it mentioned that the landscaping requirement was being met, but in the staff report, there was a does not comply. Clarify that.
Yeah, there were still some items that after we finished with the concept review that were not complying. I think that in general they were meeting the bulk of the requirements, and so now that they're in the site plan phase, they're working through this.
Okay, so at this point, rather than go one by one, I'm sure the applicant is willing to comply with all of the do not complies, the staff report once it gets further down the process.
Yes, that's what we're working through.
I can tell you, if there's do not complies, does not complies, and there's lots of them, then the Planning Commission isn't generally as friendly moving that on. So, but I know you'll do a good job and help us out and make sure those are complies.
Right, any other comments? Commissioner Funk?
Just really quick, also to kind of follow up on that. So with concept plans, what we try to do with the concept plan is get them as close to compliant as possible, and anything that's still outstanding can be addressed with the site plan. We just try to make them aware of all the big issues.
Actually, this looks real good, other than the do not complies, and I'm glad that you've already commented and said that you will comply.
He's the one you need to worry about.
I really don't have any major problems other than those do not complies, and you've said that you would comply, so that's no problem then.
Commissioner Steele.
I have 3 or 4 questions, and a comment or two. The garbage surround needs a 3-foot buffer, landscape buffer between the parking space and the garbage surround.
That, yes, in the site plan application, they brought that up and that's been changed.
Okay. Is there a door on the north?
Yes, there is.
And that will be the main entrance for peak?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's not reflected, I think, in the elevations you have, but.
Okay. And where's the HVAC going to be? Is it a roof mounted or
There would be roof.
Okay. And you know that any stairs or any access to the roof needs to be interior?
We didn't know that, but we were just made aware of it, and we made changes, so it's on the interior.
And it needs to be well screened, the equipment needs to be well screened.
In that elevation, they showed some screening walls, but it was a different material, which they said that's not allowed, so we've raised the parapets of the building to hide those, so we don't have to provide a separate screening wall.
And on some of the elevations, it showed white where there should have been a parapet, but that should match the color of the building. Okay.
And even the latest rendering still had the backside of the parapet as white. He just hadn't put that it will be painted to match the front color.
Okay. And the lighting, don't we require a bell-shaped
The
fixture?
lighting's been removed now.
Okay.
So the building will have no exterior lighting. We're still working on the sign application. We don't have lit signs, but make sure that that meets city code also. So on the building, there'll be no exterior lighting, just exit.
And I'm going to argue with staff on one. The parking, you have parked it as if everything in there could be medical. And I like that. I think we need to do that, because if we don't have that extra parking and you happen to get a doctor or another dentist and a deli, then you need them. And so there was a comment in the staff report that you might be over the 25%, but the council even weighed in on this a couple of meetings ago. So I like the 5 per thousand. And then this is for our engineer. It says in the engineer's report that there's a ponded depth into parking stalls shall not exceed 8 inches. Can you expound upon that? That just doesn't seem right.
Okay, you alluded to this before the meeting, and I assumed we were talking, you're talking about the standards, and maybe you are, because it's in the proposed standards.
And it's in this too.
Yeah, so it showed up here. So this little discussion will cover that also. The rationale is the city engineer is primarily responsible for public health and safety of persons and property. And so where the 8 inches comes from is that's the height up to the bottom of the door of a typical sedan. And that's where it comes from. That's why it was suggested that it be allowed up to there. That is subject for discussion here in the standards. This is just a concept plan. So that was the rationale.
That concerns me, because that means that in a heavy rainstorm, then those parking places would be rendered unusable.
Okay, so that involves a discussion of the definition of heavy. So these ponds are sized for what we typically call a 100-year storm, which really means any storm has a 1% chance of happening in any given year. So it's sized for a very rare event, and that ponded depth remains at that depth for a relatively short period of time. So that's the definition of, I can't remember the word you used, big event. So city engineer's responsibility, public health and safety of persons and property. We've addressed that with the 8 inches. Beyond that, this is on private property. My rationale was that's a business decision that they want to make, to potentially inconvenience customers in a very rare event.
What would be the alternative?
If they, so there are two alternatives. One would be surface storage, which would consume area on the site. The other alternative would be subsurface storage, and that's just expensive. Or the other alternative would be to not allow that height, that ponded depth, to allow a lesser ponded depth.
It bothers me because I ended up at a APA conference in Atlanta, and the heavens opened. And I was going on a mobile tour, and I was wading water up to almost my knees to get on the bus. And so, yeah, I guess I am. I'm nearing it.
But, I recognize all those issues. I'm just saying the rationale that I was making, and there's a business decision here that in rare events they're going to inconvenience customers.
Even if it's 4, 5, 6 inches, it's still, you're going to have people in not a 100-year storm, but lesser storms, they're going to be wading water, yes?
Commissioner Steele, I would like to just go on record and say that Gordon and I had this fight not less than 2 weeks ago.
I wouldn't characterize it as a fight.
We had this exact same discussion, and we've gone through this internally, and unfortunately, most standards include that amount of storage in their parking lots, and it is what it is. It happens. We get complaints about it. It's a discomfort, but ultimately, it's kind of a common practice, and it's crazy common practice, but it's practice nonetheless. So I just wanted to point out that we've argued about this one, and quite honestly, I'm going to let the engineer win on this one because it is commonplace. I've been fighting this same argument for as long as I've been a city manager because it's just one of those things that always comes up. So from a preference standpoint, I understand the position. I've made the same conversations. We've debated it back and forth, and on this particular front, I'm just going to, default back to the engineering department and say it's going to happen once in a blue moon, and we ought to be cognizant that, occasionally our feet will get wet if we step out in a 100-year storm. So,
Can I add, as a business owner, I would rather have the retention in my parking lot because I can make that look good all the time, where I rarely see a retention pond that looks good.
Okay.
And so let me add something here. The city engineer is not the last word. This is just a technical recommendation based on the role that I play. There are other factors that go in. So as this thing goes forward, both of them go forward, there are other factors that I think the Planning Commission and, well, obviously, the Planning Commission and the City Council can express their desires.
Well, does this meet the clean water standards for runoff?
Oh, yeah. They have to, downstream of this facility, they still have to do all the same things as any other way. Oh, and, sorry, one other thing that you'll see in this discussion, of course, we're having it, there was a comment on this plan. The way it was designed is this inundated area was right up to the edge of the doorway, and something that we've got in the standard won't allow that. I'm recommending a foot of freeboard between finished floor elevations and the top of.
Okay.
So they've got some work to do. Even if the 8 inches is allowable, they still got some work to do with relative to the other constraint.
Okay. I think that's it.
Yes, go ahead.
The applicant planning to submit a plat amendment to combine the lots?
Yes, we have submitted one,
Oh, you have?
working
Okay.
through that, yeah.
Okay, perfect. I wanted to ask, staff, so if the landscape, or if Redwood Road landscaping is included, then does the applicant meet the 20% requirement?
Yeah, they do.
Oh, they do, okay. And we'd like an opaque fence between the property and the housing units to the west. Is that something that the applicant's willing to install as well?
So we've had the discussion, yes, we decided to put an opaque fence, but then, can't remember who it was, came back and said, well, we don't love the concrete fence, how about we do a hedge instead? It's next to retention pond, back to that comment, which is really a weed and garbage collector is what that thing is. And so I want to screen it also, so we're happy to do whatever they want, but we did put a 6-foot fence in, and then they came back and said we'd prefer a hedge, so we switched to a hedge for now.
Allowed by the code? Oh, it had to be,
As long as it blocks the vision.
oh, it had to
Yeah,
be
that's
a,
right. That can be one of the options.
okay, sorry, I thought since it was residential that it had to be an opaque fence. This has to be opaque. So then what about during the winter? So you're gonna have to put in,
Tape the leaves back onto the,
okay,
And I'll
so,
be honest, I don't know what the landscaper plan put there, but we did switch to fence and then we switched it to a hedge now.
okay.
And if they take
Well,
us
if it was
the other
under-
way, we'll go the other way.
Yeah, well, if it was under advisement from the city, then I'm fine with that, but I guess we take a look at what the hedge is when that time comes in. Okay, that's it for me.
others? I'd just like to commend you for your attitude of cooperation. I've noticed, for all the non-compliance and all the questions that we've asked, you've said that you're going to follow the code, you're going to work with the city, and so that's just a breath of fresh air for us. Thank you for that, and for when you do come forward, that all those red non-comply in our staff report will become complies. Everybody up here is pretty happy, so thank you for your cooperation in that.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, since we don't have any decision to make, thank you for your time as well. All right, we're going to move on to item number 5. Now, this is a continued public hearing and possible legislative recommendation for the general plan update. I will entertain a motion to continue the continuance of that open hearing. How does that work?
I would just say, reopen the public hearing.
There you go.
I move to continue with to reopen the public hearing for the general plan update.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We have reopened. We'll turn the time over to Logan Simpson.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me back. I just have a really quick presentation about the changes that were made, and
Before you continue, just for the record, could you tell us your name and address?
my name is Chrissy Gilmore, and Bountiful, Utah.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to go over a couple of the changes we made based on your feedback last time. So we reformatted a little bit more. We removed Chapter 1, and then Chapter 1 is now the vision chapter that was moved up. And then we took the stuff that was taken out of Chapter 1, put it in Appendix B, Plan Study, and then you should see a preface mixed in with like where the table of contents is and acknowledgements. That just gives a little bit of background on what a general plan is before the reader opens the document. And then we also reviewed for missing sources. We ended up keeping the sources as in-text citations instead of adding the references at the end, since there weren't that many and there were the similar sources throughout. And then the big major change, we incorporated your vision statement, so that's in there now. And then for the industrial, so we took your feedback and we changed some of the text in the industrial land use designation to talk about how, so it's a zoning and industrial areas should be separated into multiple zones based on level of intensity, and only the lightest industrial uses should be located near residential development. And it includes the other text in there too, but that was what was added in. And then we added the buffer around the public works site, the industrial buffer around the public works site. And that was it. So I hope we didn't miss anything, but we're willing to go back again if we need to. So, yeah, did that meet your concerns?
I think you did a really good job. We can open it up to the planning commission. I think there is some feedback about the vision statement, some additional changes, so we'll open up the time to, I guess we do need to open this up to public comment first, so let's do that. At this time, we're going to open up public comment for the continued hearing for the general plan update. Stan, do you have anything? Okay. And we'll go ahead and close public comment at this time for item number 5. And we'll open that up to the planning commission.
Perhaps we could have Kimber type this so we can see it on the screen.
The vision statement.
Clarity. Good.
We have a proposal to switch to bullets.
So the whole idea behind this is to essentially take what's currently there and just put a little polish. As we looked at it, several of us agreed that it was just a very lengthy sentence, and so took essentially what was there in bulletized list for clarity's sakes and just easy comprehending. And
I think that's a great idea.
you know, grammar you can figure out, but
And by the way, I have no other comments either. The vision statement was the
I
only.
think it was.
Did everybody get a chance to look at it before? I mean, kind of passed it around.
It went down quick, but yeah.
Okay. Did anybody else have any other comments, or are you okay with what we had up there?
The only thing I'll say is I've never seen a vision statement with bullets.
I haven't either, but I think it works. It gets the point across and accomplishes a vision, so I don't see any problem with it.
I felt
Yeah,
the same way.
We had a run-on sentence with 2 lists of multiple items, and so it was, and
Yeah.
Now, I've seen that a lot in the vision statements.
right? We could have broken it up, but.
We're unique now.
Yeah, I
So-
think this works, because the vision statement's supposed to be for your residents to look at it and see what they can expect in the future, and bullet points work just as well as a run-on sentence, so we're good.
Who would like to read it in? Oh, I would save it, though. You would save it somewhere. We're not in any hurry. We're not in any hurry. You're in a hurry? Oh. You're welcome. You didn't watch it yet? I watched the whole thing.
From the media.
Oh, okay, there you go.
I'm figuring it out. He said, my little Moana.
Rock.
Okay.
If you keep talking about it, we're going to make you sing it.
Incredible. That did fine.
They're coming out with another one. All right. Who wants to read this in? Well, I think we're ready. Can you zoom in a little bit on the lower right-hand corner? Yeah. All right, yeah, we've used it
Okay.
time wisely.
It says, Saratoga Springs is a growing community with an unparalleled quality of life. Now and into the future, we strive to increase recreation opportunities for all ages, maximize our lakeside locations, provide vibrant gathering places, offer a range of housing choices, and encourage a variety of employment and business opportunities. We will maintain sound fiscal strategies and sustainable city services in pursuit of these goals.
I think that's really good.
Everybody like that? Good work. All right, do we have any other comments on everything else that they've done? Looks like they've done a great job in responding to...
For the rest of the document?
Yes, for the
Oh,
rest of the document.
Okay, I do have some.
Okay, let's open it up to that. Thank you, Kimber. Control S. All right.
I have just a comment. I would have liked to have seen a little more of the gray, the industrial, to the north of the Public Works, and maybe a little more to the east. And I am concerned about the medium density in that area, in the area to the north. That I would love to see that be all industrial. And then we could do some transitional zoning and put the medium density, and then it goes to the R9. I don't know if anybody else agrees with me, but that's the only thing I can think of. And it goes with the objective under neighborhoods is to connect housing to services and amenities, and connections from housing to jobs, child care, schools, retail, and other amenities. So I'm concerned that that is such a good place for industrial, because it is, you can kind of hide it down in there, I guess. Maybe that would be what I would say. We don't have any hills that we can actually hide things behind, so that might be the best place we have. That's it for me.
Great.
I also have some concern about industrial, and I like the comments that you've made. Let me ask our staff first some questions. When we have someone come in here that has a parcel of land that's zoned one way, and they want to do what's allowed on that zone, there's really not a lot we can do. Is that correct?
As long as they are compliant with the code, then that is correct. If it's zoned for the property or for that use, then, and it's an administrative decision, they just have to meet the code.
What if someone has some property that is not zoned the way they want it, but this plan shows that it should or can be zoned that way? Do we have any recourse in stopping them, even though this says that it can be zoned that way?
Yeah, as the zoning, the rezoning is a legislative decision. The general plan is an advisory document, so it gives guidance to the council in making rezone decisions when making those recommendations. But it's not binding. It helps the applicant kind of know what is more expected on that property. But if they come in, not guaranteed it.
Because I'm still having some problems with industrial being next to residential, especially since if that does become industrial, which it's not right now, but according to this, it can become industrial, that they could then put adult stores in that location and would be right across the street from residential. And that's a big problem to me.
Yeah, you absolutely have recourse, and that's actually one of the things that was changed in here, is that this is identified as the industrial category with a couple of tiers, but it does specify that only the lightest intensity is your residential development. So when we're going to do a rezone, if they want to put industrial right next to residential, this guides us to do something different and makes it less likely that we'll end up with industrial right next to commercial or to residential. You'll end up with something of the lighter category, some sort of office.
But we don't have that yet.
Well, that's here, and it refers to zones that we do have.
Oh,
So
okay.
it does put it in place.
Okay.
So, besides the general plan, so this is kind of a good opportunity learn about really what general plans do, and Kimber's absolutely right, it's an advisory document. If someone comes in and the general plan says this, it's recommended that this be industrial in this area, but it's zoned residential, the developer doesn't have an entitlement there. But it cuts both ways, the planning commission as well, when a developer comes in and it's zoned a certain way and the planning commission is reading through the general plan and sees all this stuff, and they come already with their notes, or the residents come already with their notes and say, well, it's inconsistent with the general plan. It's the same thing that's true for the developer. The vested right is the zoning, not the general plan and what the general plan says. Cuts both ways.
To address the concern that Commissioner Funk had about this use within the industrial zone, can a conditional use permit be required for that kind of use?
For SOBs?
I don't know what SOB is. Thank you.
Typically when you are dealing with constitutional rights such as that, apparently the U.S. Supreme Court believes that that's a protected free speech, a form of protected free speech. Usually we don't like to see the conditional use permit process. I mean, it's similar to the residential treatment facilities for people with disabilities. They have to be permitted uses in all residential zones in the city. You don't want to set yourself up for a conditional permit hearing, public hearing, where you have all the residents filling the room and then some, and they're out in the hallways and all speaking out against it, and you're put in the awkward position of saying, well, conditional use permit is, technically if they can show that all the detrimental impacts are being addressed by or mitigated by the developer, we still have to grant this even though we've got hundreds of people opposed to it. You don't want to put yourself in that situation. It's just better to make it a permitted use, set the standards very high. Don't set yourself up for that situation. It's not a good idea, or the council for that matter. It's just very, very difficult to say no to hundreds of people, even though you know that you might have to.
So if SOBs are considered by the Supreme Court as protected speech, what about churches which we require conditional use permits for? It's not considered free speech.
Well, and
Or it just never came up.
It's protected.
Or, I'm sorry, protected speech.
It's kind of the same thing, but you don't see people opposing churches too much. We probably should change the.
There aren't enough atheists. We need to breathe more.
Not like SOBs, right? I mean, you're not going to get.
Not in this area.
Just wait till the temple comes in. There will be opposition, I guarantee.
Yeah, you really we ought to rethink that and turn it into a permitted use. And that's been, for some reason I thought we had changed that, but I guess we haven't. But anyway, it's really to avoid that sticky situation that you put yourself in.
Is it possible to put, and I've seen it in other cities, but where you say it has, that use has to be so many feet from any church? And
Sorry, what?
any church, school, playground?
Are you talking about the religious institute?
No.
We're back to the SOBs.
Oh, the separation. Yeah, we're not dealing so much with that. As long as we allow reasonable alternative locations in the city, you don't have to make it financially feasible to put in an SOB. But there have to be ample reasonable alternatives in the city. You can't say, well, we only want it on this 5 acres on top of the mountain that you can't get any water to or roads to. That's a violation of free speech there. That's the ample reasonable alternative locations in the city.
The low and the medium and the high industrial, doesn't that kind of take care of that though? I mean, it kind of acts in the same sort of way.
I hope so. Well, it should, and when we get the finished document, then we can.
This tool, separation for residential, west for industrial, next to residential. legislative decision.
Right now, we have one area in the city that's zoned industrial that allows them, and we should rethink that. Nobody wants to zone an area to allow those to come in, but developer comes in, and again, you've got a rezone decision with notices that get sent out for public hearing. You don't want to put yourself or the council in that situation of having to say yes, even though hundreds of people oppose it. So think about those areas you can put them where they will have as least impact as possible, because there's plenty of separation between those and incompatible uses.
Let me just clarify, the city, or the general plan says that, in every reasonable case or whatnot, you should feather between low-density housing and high-density housing. But there's nothing that says you feather from residential to industrial?
That's what this is basically.
I mean, to me, that doesn't make sense. If we're going out of our way, and we've had several cases where we're stipulating that they feather out from low density to high density, but you can go from low density to industrial, it seems a little counterproductive or counterintuitive.
You're wanting to see it in the
medium.
code?
Well, I don't even know if it's in the code. I just know the general plan says if you're going from low density to high density, you're supposed to feather those densities out.
That's
Yeah.
actually in the code.
Okay.
Guiding.
So if that's in the code, then I don't see why it wouldn't be a reasonable thing to say, if you're going from residential to industrial, there has to be some sort of feathering of commercial or something in between those.
It could be office. You could put
Could be
office.
office.
Well,
That's a good buffer.
I think that's what the general plan is now doing.
General plan's trying to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I see the concern, and you're talking about, if you can see this area going into Eagle Mountain, right, is what I'm guessing. Yeah, and so that's where we were having that challenge about a month ago, trying to find where industrial fit because of the buffering reason with residential, and this felt like the best solution, but I agree, it is, it's not the best that it's right along residential.
What other areas of discussion do we have about the general plan? Seems like we've worked on this really well. We've had some good feedback, good changes. We've revamped the vision. Are we ready to make a decision? I'll entertain a motion.
I think I found it. Based upon the evidence and explanation received today, I move to forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for the proposed update to the Saratoga Springs General Plan with the finding and conditions below. Do we have to read in the new mission? Okay.
Say contained in the staff report.
With the updated vision
Then
statement.
About the industrial, I wasn't sure if that was,
Oh, no, that's for a future code amendment.
well,
Oh, no.
Commissioner Steele's concern around the Public Works area, so,
And I don't know how everybody else feels, but
yeah, and
Can we finish the motion and then we can ask a question about that? Okay. You want to finish that motion? We can ask questions after.
Proposed update to the Saratoga Springs General Plan with the finding and conditions below. I don't need to read all the findings, right?
And
And adding the new vision statement.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Do we have a question on the motion?
yes.
Commissioner Steele?
How does everybody feel about adding a little bit more, some more industrial in that area to the north of the Public Works building?
Well, I'm okay with it.
Can you quantify what you're requesting? Talking acres, are we talking
That area
football
that,
field? What are we talking about?
well, it would be nice if we could go all the way. That could be a really nice campus-type area. And
Connect the two industrial areas.
yeah, and then go on over to go all the way over to the gray line and up. Mm-hmm.
Including the tan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, got it.
I don't know how you put that into words, but I think our planning director has it.
Am I not, is this where the annexations are taking place?
Yes, so this map may be revised depending on what the council decides to do with the annexations in that area.
Okay, back to
You'll
our,
be seeing this in,
motion. Did you want to make an adjustment to your motion?
Yes, I accept Commissioner Stowe's
What
adjustment.
exactly are you accepting? Let's quantify that.
add industrial to the north of the Public Works Building, connecting to the additional industrial area and extending to the boundary of the city to the.
You agree with that?
I agree to that.
And the second?
Yes, I agree.
Any other questions on the motion?
Now doing that, the idea of feathering from residential to industrial is something just at a complete later date?
No, it's still required in here with the lightest industrial coming in, and industrial also includes office, warehouse type uses, not just going straight from residential to.
So extending that up to the other industrial part with the, as it currently sits, does not impact any residential. Okay.
Okay, any other questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Great.
Hooray.
Thank you.
And when will that go on?
It's on the agenda for.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just want to say
Great.
thank you. We really appreciate working with you guys, and your staff is, I'm not just saying this just to say it, but really the most competent staff we've worked with. So I know you're losing one of them, but they're all very, very great, and you guys are lucky. So thank you for working with us.
Thank you for being flexible with all of our demands and changes.
You were great. So thank you very much.
Great. All right, I think we're going to move right along. Let's go right into this. We're going to move to item number 6. Did you want us to hold for a second, Kimber? Kimber, did you want us to hold, or are you good?
No, go ahead, sorry.
Okay.
I'm giving her her jump.
Okay, great. Okay, we're going to item number 6. This is a continued item, possible legislative recommendation on revisions to the engineering standards and specification manual for the city of Saratoga Springs, presented by City Engineer Gordon Miner. And before we turn the time over to Gordon, let's go ahead and I will entertain a motion to reopen the continued item. Sorry? Did we close it?
You're welcome to open it up again for another, public hearing. That's within your right. It is a legislative decision, but
Since we have so many people here ready to talk about it, I don't think it'll hurt.
I would just use the word reopen, because continue could also be perceived as in
Right.
the future. So just motion to reopen the public hearing.
I move that we reopen the public hearing on the revisions of the engineering standards and specifications manual for the city of Saratoga Springs.
We have a motion.
Second.
Second, any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Gordon, time is yours.
Thank you. Okay, so just as a little preface, and a reminder, these revisions took a long time, several meetings with a lot of different players, departments, and so forth. I'm here as kind of the point man for all of that. I may or may not be able to answer some of the changes that were made here, because some of them, for example, we had one about the Parks Department last time. I was able to speak to it, but, you know, other changes to other departments, I may not be keenly, you know, aware of the details of why they did what they did, but I'll do my best in that case. Also, this is not a thorough revision. These revisions that were done were just ones that came up in the course of the last year or so that we saw as being needed to change. This isn't, you know, I didn't comb through this, and so if you have questions about other parts of the document where I haven't suggested a change, I may or may not be able to address that tonight either. With some time, I can address any question, but just may not be prepared tonight. Also, before we get to some of them, I just want to make you aware that the maximum depth of 4 feet in detention ponds, that recommendation has been stricken. So in other words, it, you know, there is no maximum depth. There wasn't before, and the recommendation has been taken out.
Okay.
We've combed through the document and believe that we have removed all of the references to handicap and replaced them with disabled, or ADA.
This was one that I was going to ask you about. It looks like you've done that, except in the details, the labeling of the detail itself for the disabled stall, or the disabled something.
You mean in some of the drawings?
It would be a detail sheet, yes.
Yes, some of these that,
Right.
you know, look like this.
And the title at the bottom didn't look like it had been changed. And that might be something that would not come up.
So now that wouldn't be in, well, I'll just have to, tell me which one it is, because Ron told me that he went through all of them, including the drawings. So maybe just shoot me an email and tell me which one that is, and I'll make that correction. Okay, so being as we talked about it during the other item, well, I guess we don't need to talk about it more. The changes about ponding in parking lots, those are in there. In the roadway design standards, what I'm telling you right now are a couple changes that we've made since the document that you saw. There are a couple of lines in the table 1. It's the 0500-12. It's a table that fills 1.5 pages. I've since found a couple lines there that are redundant or conflicting, and so the one line was, well, they are redundant and sometimes conflicting, and so the redundancy was taken out, just to let you know there. So before we get to whatever individual questions you might have, I think the most substantive change here is a recommendation that's come through a work session that Kimber worked on, was to the typical section of the neighborhood street, which you see in front of you here. The change is to widen the pavement. So that was, what was that, 24 feet before? Yeah, 24 feet. Oh, so, but they were 12-foot lanes, right? What they used to be. So we've added 5 feet. Lip of curb to lip of curb, and
Could you indicate whether this is private, whether this is commercial or residential? Where is this applied?
On local streets, so that would apply to local streets, both the public and private. The other change was the park strip was narrowed from 9 feet to 8 feet. And in order to accommodate, and so that's a net increase of 3 feet. And so the overall right-of-way width went from 56 feet to 59 feet. And so we are going to face an adjustment period with the development community as they see this. They've been accustomed to 56 feet and a little bit different configuration. And so this is what came out of that work session from the City Council.
Could you explain the reason for the change? I mean, we used to have, we used to say that the narrow streets were to maintain safety, because if you have cars parked on both sides, then cars going through have to slow down. If we're widening it, is it still the same reason, or, I mean, what's the, you know?
Kimber, would you mind commenting on that, being as you carried the ball on that one?
So, yes, as a planner, I'm in favor of narrower streets typically. The issue that we've had is that with our previous cross-section, yes, we had two 12-foot travel lanes, but then what happened is people parked on both sides of the street, and oftentimes it got too narrow to where you couldn't even get a fire truck through. And so because of the safety concerns and the complaints that we'd been getting, the council wanted to see an option for an alternative. And so this was it's kind of a compromise where it shows 29 feet, but really you end up getting the 32 feet of drivable surface so that when people are parking, you still are able to keep a clear travel lane down the center. Now, it's still going to feel a little bit tight, when there are cars parked there, you're going to end up with the traffic calming subconsciously. When there are no cars there, yes, you'll probably end up with some additional speeding, especially on straight streets, but most of these streets either have a bike lane on the side or they have parking, which helps subconsciously. We went with a 59-foot and recommended reducing the park strip by 1 foot on either side so that we could keep the 5-foot sidewalks, get the additional travel lane, but not increase the right-of-way requirement so much that it's going to affect density. That was kind of a compromise. We took it to the council for work session since multiple members of the council have asked us to look into this, and they supported something like this, so wanted to bring it to the planning.
Okay, thank you.
How does this compare to other cities? Sorry.
So I can answer that question.
Okay.
And actually, when Kimber was given this assignment from the City Council, Kimber asked me that question. In return, the answer that I gave her was about 7 different professional references. So, Institute of Transportation Engineers, American Society of Civil Engineers, Urban Land Use, something or other. A number of them, American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, a number of professional publications. The reason I provided those to her is because, in my view, this is not a decision to be made. In other words, if you poll other cities, you could be just making the same mistakes that they're making. So the information that I provided, and what turned out to be the most critical reference was the International Fire Code. This really is driven by the International Fire Code. That 33 feet face to face? No, 32 feet face to face? Curb face to curb face is, according to the fire code, the minimum width that you would need to not require signage denying parking on one side or the other. And so what this does is accomplishes to the best degree that we can the traffic calming with the narrow street while complying totally with the fire code.
Gordon, we're going to let you finish your presentation, and then we'll open it up to public comment, and then we'll come back to the planning commission.
Okay. So I think beyond this, I don't know that I have anything else to say. You wouldn't want me to go through every one of these one by one. So I think at this point, I would just be ready to answer questions about why I'm recommending the changes I'm recommending. And I would reiterate what I mentioned before, that these are just recommendations from an engineering standpoint, subject to the Planning Commission's suggestions and the City Council approval.
Thank you, Gordon. So we did reopen public comment, so we reopened it. So we'll turn the time over right now to the public, if there is any. Stan? None from you? Okay. And since we don't have any other public comment, we'll close public, or do we need to close it, or do we need to keep it open? Are we ready to make a decision today?
I have some comments.
Okay, we're going to open it up to the planning commission, but do we need to close public
So,
comment?
one thing to consider, you can always reopen the public hearing at a later time to take additional public input.
Okay,
And you
great.
don't even need to say we're reopening the public hearing, just say we're considering additional public input.
Right.
It's a little tricky where
Less-
you're
less
dealing
formal,
with an
but-
administrative decision, and there's due process considerations there, but it's really, I've never seen a challenge because it's a planning commission or council has reopened a public hearing.
Right, then we've
So I
now
would say you
closed
close the
public-
public hearing, and then if the planning commission decides at the next meeting to reopen it, by all means, one of you make that motion.
We'll then close public comment at this time and open it up to the planning commission. Any comments?
I have just the references about the handicap, and that's the only thing I've got tonight.
All right.
It's ST
Go ahead.
5A, B, C, D, and E.
ST5.
That's correct.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Steele.
Thank you.
Commissioner Funk?
I have a question for Kimber. Is the city trying to move away from the word culinary?
Well, I think that's probably a question for me, actually.
Oh, okay.
And yes.
Okay, so we have a lot of references to culinary on these. Would you like those numbers also?
Sure, we might as well. Okay, yeah, we want to use drinking. So,
Okay.
yes, thank you.
CW5, CW10B, CW12, CW13, CW16.
Yeah, so I'm just going to make the general comment to search and replace on.
Okay. I can go on. There's only a few more. PI 11, ST7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 30 and 33.
Did you get all that?
Yeah. So I'm glad you picked up on that, because actually Utah is a little bit unique that way. Culinary means cooking, right? And so nationwide, really the profession calls it drinking water.
Okay. And that's the only thing I really noticed. Everything else looked like you'd made all the changes, so I realize it took a lot of time to do that, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Page 50, at the bottom of page 56.
So I'm not,
It's 56 in the report. I don't know, there's no page number on the,
What's the number reference? Is there like a 202 or a 301?
oh, there's a 02621-5.
Oh, what about up here? What does it look like? there a heading?
Part 3 execution, but,
There we go.
It's the one.
is that it? Oh, how lucky. Okay.
Oh, I got it. I'm here. So 02621-5.
Yeah, the very, so at the very end, how the text goes, it says compacted and inspected and, then go to the next page, and then you're on P.
Oh, yes. So, we only provided the pages here that changed.
Okay.
And so I'll just check with Ron to make sure that whatever was being changed there continued on to the next page. It is puzzling that you would think that continuation of that sentence would be on the following page.
Yeah, I just didn't notice that anywhere else, so, okay. So, and then 118.
So the easiest way, Commissioner Kilgore, if you could find that number that's like the one 02621-5, that will get us there.
Gordon, I'm also pulling.
Okay.
This one is a drawing, so
Oh, okay. ST what? Or L?
LS-5.
There we go. That helps me. Okay, I'm there.
The top upper right-hand corner red box says pedestal spelled wrong.
Oh, yeah.
And 3 pages down, 121. That's -8. Upper left-hand corner box, female is spelled wrong.
Ron, bless his heart. What page was, what,
It
what's
was
the drawing?
LS8.
Should be a new word. The way it's spelled.
Female, yeah. That's a new
That
spelling.
way it's gender neutral, it's like herstory. Then, sorry, I only have a couple more. I only have 2 more. LS-15. Again, the red box at the top.
Yeah, score curb, both
Curb is
those are
spelled
spelled wrong. Well, score's probably all right, so curb.
Yeah, just
Is it
curb.
meant to be curve or curb? Pretty sure it's supposed to be curb.
Yeah, curb with a B.
And last one, excuse me, LP-4. Oh, 137.
Got it?
Spelling, and I'm just,
Well, that's a busy one.
it's a box, I believe. It's conduit. You have all the conduits right except for 1. For 5, yes, that's right. Conduit.
Can you point to it, Kimber, which one?
It's in the big red box, number 5. The first conduit, there's 2 conduits.
Oh, in the box to the right?
Number 5, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All the other conduits are right. That's it for me.
Thank you.
I'm assuming that after this, or before this is published, somebody will edit the whole document.
No.
Guys did this.
We'll edit.
I just noticed several places where there's like an extra space, and I'm not going to give you those here, but
Yeah, so we can go through and make those types of cleanups anytime. Don't have to come back here.
okay.
Yeah, so these are changes that we specifically made. Like I say, we did not review this document word for word. So if there were problems, latent problems from before that we didn't specifically address, well, they're still there. And, we'll hope to get them next time around.
All right, any other comments? I'll entertain a motion.
I move to forward a positive recommendation to the city council regarding these proposed revisions to the city's standard technical specifications and drawings.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
So I may want to add, so we've made a few changes in the course of our discussion in addition to what's here, so I don't know if you want to mention them generally that way.
I was going to get to that. Do we
Okay.
have a question on the motion? And we do. So do you want to add in the additions and changes that have been made by staff and by the planning commission today?
Yes. How do we?
And I agree.
Cross-section.
And including the new road cross-section.
Is
And
that
I
okay
agree
with
with
the
that.
second?
Yes.
Any other questions on this motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Good work, Gordon.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's a lot of work.
It has been.
Okay. Let's just go right through. Let's do this.
Knock on wood before you say anything.
I didn't say anything about anything. We're going to move on to item number 7. This is a public hearing, code amendments, multiple sections, city initiated, presented by our planning director, current planning director, Kimber. Turn the time over to you.
I'm a lame duck, yeah. No, I'm not. Ask me next week, just kidding. Okay, so this is a public hearing for the code amendments that we discussed last time. Okay, so for the record, going through, just a quick summary, throughout replacing all references to handicap or handicapped to ADA. There are only a couple, but in case we find any more, we can just make that change automatically. Definitions, we talked about the various refueling options. As we received some feedback from the commission last time, we tried to match the fuel types for those different refueling station uses, clarifying bed and breakfast, convenience stores, personal services, hair salon, spa, and deli. So updating those to be a bit broader and more clear and consistent between them. Arterial setbacks, we talked about having increased setbacks along arterial roads. The accidental deletion of the open space frontage requirement, making sure to put that in so that you don't have open spaces in neighborhoods that are completely hidden behind homes or other items where you can't see them for safety, access them really. Clarifying those setbacks and lot standards for footprint development, and of course with all these changed definitions, updating the use table. And then as we discussed, clarifying that non-residential development also is subject to the trail and amenity. Let's see, residential separation for gas and fuel stations. We also, after the last meeting, relocated the separation from parks and schools that was in the conditional use section and moved that up into this section, so it applies to all of them equally. Updating temporary uses to comply with state code. Let's see, a couple clarification and minor changes to landscaping and fencing that we talked about in the work session. Let's see, same thing with parking and the tree requirements, just clarifying for both consistency and to make sure that it's implementable. We also added at the Planning Commission's direction feedback some clarification on what close proximity means, adding a measurement in there so that it's not just, oh, that looks close to me. Let's see, subdivisions. We talked about group mailboxes and remnant parcels and subdivisions, clarifications. Let's see, timeframes. That was one we kind of added at the last minute in the work session, that if people don't get their stuff into us in time, they're not getting them to you the same day submittals, because we had, I can't even remember, I've lost track of how many people have brought us things the same day and wanted you to see them, so.
Any applause for that one? Thank you.
We're applauding it internally because it's a little. All right, then let's see, just some clarifications and relocations in conditional uses. Most of these are cleanups to make sure that everything is consistent throughout the code and consistent. Based on a few recent applications, or maybe one or two recent applications, clarifying what is a use customarily conducted outside, and then limiting bright colors to accents. I actually saw the building in Bluffdale that in bright yellow and saw the lighter. All right, then we had, I'm sure we'll have some discussion on this, but the lighting and signage, allowing for limited digital changeable copy fuel prices, open and closed for drive-throughs, et cetera, limiting them to monument or canopy signage so that they can't change them, flashing and changing and just a small percentage of the canopy or monument sign. So rather than regulating the content on those, which we shouldn't be doing, or to too much of an extent, minimizing the size, and the rest will take care of itself. So that's it for those changes in the summary. I have the whole document here if we wanted to check changes. So if we have any changes that you want to make, staff is recommending that you forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for these sections. Because of the time frame, if there are sections that you would like to table, my request would be that you forward a positive recommendation on those sections you're ready to move forward on, and only continue those sections that you want to handle separately, so that any of these I can wrap up on the 20th. And it is a public hearing. We have not received any public comment, and back over to.
Thank you very much. This is a public hearing, so we will open up the public hearing at this time for any public comment. Stan?
And he doesn't have it.
Since Stan does not have permission, we will close public comment at this time. And we'll open it up to the Planning Commission for comment. Can I just ask a question real quick? You mentioned the buffer or the separation between the gas stations and residential use. Could you talk about that a little bit? Because I know we had a lot of people not happy about the Pelican Bay.
Yes.
And how would this help that?
Okay, so let me get down here to that section so we can actually see the separation language. But what this does, so with the fuel station down by Harbor Bay and Pelican Bay, the gas station was right up against a residential development. And we had language in our code that required that gas stations have a separation of, I believe it's 500 feet, I'll come down here and take a look, between residential and parks and schools. And there was no requirement in that case, though, because it wasn't just a standalone gas station. The conditional use only applied to something like Murphy Express, where you have the little tiny box and it's all just the pumps. If it's a convenience store, it was a whole different category and did not require a conditional use permit, not subject to the separation. So what this does is it applies it to anything with a fuel pump. Except private, yes. So we broadened that. So if it's a pump that's in a residential house, it's exempt from the definition of an automobile refueling station and fuel pump. For any automobile refueling station, convenience store, or other use with fuel tanks or pumps, the tanks and pumps shall be located no closer than 500 feet to any residential zone or development, school, park, playground, museum, or place of.
What about the bus
one?
The bus zone?
Oh, that's a good point. That is cool.
That's,
Residential was.
Can you even,
well, but I think we should have the school in there.
but can you even do that with the district? Tell them to do that?
Yes, we can, because the schools are exempt, but the other use wasn't, the bus barn.
Okay, and then I
barn,
want to ask,
right.
is that because of health and safety? Is that the reason? Then why do we allow it in a residential? Isn't it dangerous for all the people around them if they have a fuel pump in there?
Well, so it's, we wanted to specifically exempt out we didn't want there to be any sort of conflation of fuel tanks and the electric chargers. There are some homes that have and farms, et cetera, that have the natural gas pumps, and those have special permitting requirements, but they don't have the capacity that these pumps have. So in terms of the fuel, the dispersal, the potential fire hazard, it's much reduced as opposed to these.
Or a farm.
Yeah. Well, and a farm, they usually have enough spacing, so we exempted them.
So if I'm a land developer and I want to put in a fuel station and I have to have 500 feet, what am I going to put in that 500 feet? That's more than a football field away.
Well, if it's a small parcel that's right next to residential, it's just not suitable for a gas station.
But it could be the road too. I mean, the road
counts. It's a straight distance. If there's another parcel between that could be office building or other type of neighborhood commercial use, for example, or small commercial use, then that buffers it. But if, this particular requirement would make some parcels not appropriate for that particular land use.
So if I were a land developer, I would want to get my gas station in there before the residents comes in.
Well, if it's zoned residential, then
Still, you have to change the zoning.
The way this reads now, it's the minimum closest distance from car wash to an existing school. What about convenience stores? Because that causes as much concern as the gas pumps. Gas pumps we're concerned about. Convenience stores, the residents are concerned about.
So this was specifically just based on safety, not, people being concerned that their kids are going to go buy a beer or smoke or whatever. So this requirement for the separation was specifically for the safety of those pumps.
Okay, what about the car wash? Because that's left in.
So the car wash was left in because car washes are a conditional use, and so that can be applied when there's a conditional use for a car wash. And so we separated that. We moved the fuel separation up into 1905, so whether or not it's a conditional use or not, it applies. And then the car wash is just...
And will this then be from the pump or the car wash itself, not the property line?
Yes.
Okay.
From the actual item of concern.
Kimber.
So I will have to look at this school section just a little bit more because some of the schools have pumps. So we'll talk about that for a second while we...
Still stuck on the 500 feet. So let's talk about the two Mavericks that are coming in. One by the high school.
Yep.
Is it 500 feet away from that residence that's right there?
That residence, so that this application came in before this code. So they're
How about the one on
grandfathered.
Ring Road? Does that come in?
That one is, and I believe it is 500 feet.
Because there's a church in the way?
The church and there's...
There is a church. Let's see.
Yeah, right.
There you go.
But the 500 feet doesn't apply to church?
Yes.
It does apply to churches. So that was what we had put in. So we can make changes.
Just take a look. Where is the pump going to be there? Doesn't look like that's 500 feet away from those homes.
That's 1,000 feet right there.
1,000?
Yep. And over here, it's 770.
I love that
that's-
technology.
Where their tank, depending on where their tank is, let's see. About 800 feet.
That's good.
So.
What about the other one by the high school? I mean, still, they're grandfathered in, right?
Yeah, so this one is certainly a consideration, or a concern. Only 230? Nope. There weren't any residents there.
And we
Why
did
did you
notice
do
all the
this?
people across the street from Redwood Road, right?
Yeah,
Kimber, we did notice the people across the street from Redwood
there
Road?
weren't any really.
While we're there, I'm going to ask a question off this topic, but what is happening with that site at Pony Expressway? There's a big pile of dirt.
The tree farm?
Uh-huh. There's a big pile of dirt, and it goes east and west. I don't see a hole that it came out of. Does anybody know what's happening with that?
They,
they still are not even starting. So anything that's happening would be part of the current tree farm use, current business.
I don't think they can stockpile dirt that long by code.
Well, but he does sell mulch, he sells bark, he sells topsoil, he
He does.
sells all kinds of different
Wood.
things as part of his business. I mean, so I don't know if he just picked up some topsoil and he's selling that as part of his business, but, I mean, he's got all those concrete bins of different types of materials.
Well, this isn't in a concrete bin.
No, it's not, but
You know what I'm
it's
talking about.
ancillary to what he's doing with his landscaping business.
Okay. Thank you.
The neighbor to the north's already put their home for sale. Their home is for sale right now.
The north. Not surprised.
So what we can do, so this was the item of concern, and then what we did was we took the existing requirement for standalone gas stations and put that requirement up. In this case, this parcel would become entirely unsuitable for a fuel station or fuel pump of any type, because the pumps themselves have to be, that's 70 feet. See the issue. So even if we reduced it down to 200 feet, you're still, the most controversial sites are not going to be suitable. So that's certainly something we can talk about. For the
Kimber, could you look at Fox Hollow? Because
yeah, that's where I'm going right now.
It was
Working my way up.
500 feet, I think, they said, to the park, and there were a bunch of houses
Right here.
there.
Yep. So that is also an issue. So
There's a certain danger with gas pumps, and
yep.
with somebody, even friction, static electricity sometimes can cause an explosion, and you want the fewest people affected by it.
If I could,
Church is a buffer.
Kimber, have we seen what other cities do as far as distance? I'm not aware of any cities that are like prohibiting distance to gas pumps from residential. So I guess fundamentally, we're kind of headed down a path that is not consistent with what's happening everywhere else in the world. I know we don't like it, and I know right now we're talking about it in this vein of it's a public safety issue, but it's also a proximity issue, and it's also kind of a who comes first issue as well. And so I think rezoning it to something, if you've got neighborhood homes, that's part of the argument that they make. It's the devaluation, it's all of those things. Whereas if the gas station is in place prior to the homes being built, they're purchasing with that condition. It's like buying a home next to a pig farm or something like that. You're buying it with the understanding that that's there. So I think that there's some things that we probably want to consider, but I would just say I'm not really comfortable setting a foot distance on something and saying it's unsafe, and we believe it's unsafe because we have no empirical evidence to indicate that in this conversation tonight. And so I would say fundamentally that will get challenged, and it's something that, we either need to have it on data or we have it on preference or something, but I don't think saying 500 feet is not safe with absolutely no research to back that.
Well, it's already in the code. It's just that we're just making it consistent now. I thought, since it's in the code, that there already was a safety thing done on it. Okay. Okay, well, that's new information.
We have been looking into it. There are some recommendations, but it's not necessarily 500 feet, and it's not consistent across the board as to what that separation should be. So what we can do is just pull 1905-16 from tonight and pull the changes where we moved the spacing from 1915, everything else, and we'll do some more research and come up with a recommendation. Some separation or some requirement for buffering is probably appropriate, but whether it's going to end up being the same as what
Yeah, so separation notwithstanding, it should at least apply to all the pumps.
Oh, yeah, this applies to all the pumps.
Yeah, as opposed to what the code says today, where it only applies to
just
certain.
if it's a standalone gas station. I agree. And so we'll get this back to you.
Any other comments for these changes that are proposed? Commissioner Funk.
I just have, and this is a question I haven't heard before, so I don't know what the answer is or what. I was looking at the funeral homes. And also looking at crematories. And what was with that? There was something with that. Mortuaries?
Let's pull them up really quick.
Here we go. I've got it here. Okay, it says
So a crematory embalming facility means.
Embalming facilities, that was my question. I know in the past, and I don't know currently, because I haven't gone to any funeral homes lately, but in the past, a lot of them had embalming facilities in the basements of mortuaries, and we have different areas that allow the one and not the other, and I would think that those should be somewhat consistent.
Yeah.
Just because it's often done together. That
Makes sense.
Great observation, yes. So, I mean, with some of these other definitions, you can see we've been identifying areas where there didn't catch that one, so that's great. We'll put it on the list, so.
Okay, and then
Good one.
when you were talking about the signs on the, like open and closed for drive-through things and things
Yeah.
like that, and maybe I didn't read it close enough to really understand it if as I read it, but because this is a possibility even for a small sign, you said that would eliminate a lot of things just because of the size. Can it have running?
No.
Okay,
You
because,
put a limit on there, you can't change it more than once a day, so.
okay, because I could see that even if it's small, as long as it's running and saying something, they could put all kinds of things in there. Okay.
Thought ahead.
With that, I noticed, I went to the new gas station and they've purchased one of these 1970s,
Yep,
really?
their code didn't allow it when they got their permit. No, don't get him started.
We get with the 80s? Can we get with the 80s? I mean, seriously, is that really something that is a problem in the city? And what's the problem?
So we, for forever, have just prohibited all digital, electronic signs, with the exception of the school where they're, and so, yeah, Murphy's Express, their original permit had digital signs, and we made them change. Crossing, they knew from the get-go, they didn't even submit a plan that showed digital signs. I just redlined all the plans to make sure, showing it as digital, but just to make sure, because other people.
And we're so afraid of digital because it opens up the world to all kinds of other things? Is that what it is?
Traverse Mountain.
There's some potential for it to, be a snowball, but I think the way that we've drafted it, it keeps it reasonable. It lets people do things that are not from the 70s and yet doesn't have us have Traverse Mountain, so.
I'm from
here in
the
River City.
1970s.
Capital T.
So along with Commissioner Funk's comments, what zone does a cemetery fall in? Is it a park?
Actually, we have defined a cemetery to count as open space.
Open space, okay.
Limited, open space, limited access. Golf course, where you have to either pay or, people aren't necessarily, I guess some people will use it for jogging courses, I've seen that, but, so.
All right, any other
I have
comments?
I have one question.
Jokes.
Somewhere in here, I read that, here it is. No more than 50% of any front or street side building elevation shall consist of CMU. CMU can be that just plain gray block. Do we want that? Or would we?
I think, don't we also have, hold on, let me strike through this because we're going to pull that.
Could we put in there decorative CMU? Because that would include the fluted.
You have in here some. Hold on, let me look at the full version because this is the short version. Like Gordon, I only put the changed pages in here, so I want you to have a 400-page document again. I gotta balance you out a little. Prohibited materials, plain, it's the next paragraph, I just didn't have it there. Prohibited materials, plain gray unfinished CMU block except as an accent material. So if they're going to do 50%, it can't be the plain gray or unfinished. It
Okay,
has to be decorative of some sort.
okay.
Yep, got that
great.
covered.
I was going to say,
We've
a lot of
defined it
modern,
separately.
buildings.
This is pretty minimal. You've seen it worse, Mark. Trust me. Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns, or changes?
Right, I'll entertain a motion on this.
Based upon the evidence and explanations received today, I move to forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for the proposed, is it the right one? Amendments to sections,
Lots of sections.
do I have to say them all?
Uh,
To this, sections 19.02, 19.04,
Just say 09, 11.
okay, 19, and then the sections of .04, I'm sorry, .02, .04, .05, .06, .09, .11, .12, .13, .15, .16, and .18, with the findings and conditions in the staff report dated June 8th, 2017.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second, is there a question on the motion?
With
have
the-
one.
With the deletion, or with the postponement or
1905.
continuance of 1905,
1-6.
16, and the changes to fuel in 1915. We're going to strike those two for tonight.
You okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
I am also.
All right, any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion
Thank
passes
you.
unanimously. Again. All right, has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes from May 25th? I've already proposed a couple changes. Anybody else? I guess, do I need to put that on record, the change that I made or proposed? So the change basically was that there wasn't any, I had discussed that if this was in the ball field, I'm sorry, the sports park, there was a discussion about the city living up to the same code and standards as anybody else that was coming in, and that wasn't in there, so I had her add it, that I had talked about that. Somebody over there made it disappear, huh? Well, it's on record now. Any other changes?
I move that we accept the minutes of May the 25th, 2017, with the addition of the comments from Chair Wilkins.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second, any question on the motion? All in favor?
I
Oh, sorry.
have a question.
Sure.
Just looking here at the bottom of it, it's, and maybe does somebody else have it up? At the bottom, does it say January 26th, 2017? Oh, okay.
Catch. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 9, reports of action, Kimber.
We were going to have one on the code if there were changes, but since the only change is to strike that one, we're not going to have one tonight.
All right, item number 10, commission comments. I had one question. Could we get copied on any kind of city events or grand openings invitations?
Since you bring it up, tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., Walmart will be having its re-grand opening. You're welcome to join us.
Thank you.
Really grand.
We'll blame Owen because he's not here.
And they did some remodel.
Any other commission comments?
You try to find
Yeah, I
anything.
just-
Can't, no.
All right,
I have one comment.
yeah, well, there you go.
So our very own Senator Jake Anderegg passed the bill SB 80 this year. It's summertime, it's starting to get warm. What that bill says is that minors under the age of for operating a temporary business do not permitted. the lawn mowers and when that pops up in neighborhoods. Common sense bill.
Is that just for the summer? Just for the,
Oh, all year.
all year round?
Snow removal,
Lawn
minor,
mowing,
Hot chocolate in the winter.
hot chocolate in the winter, cookies.
Okay, good. Any other comments? Director's report.
Thanks for the nice meeting tonight, and I'm impressed with how misspelled words. Some were more blatant than others, but appreciate that. And your next meeting is also looking kind of similar to tonight in terms of volume, so our best to keep it that way. And that's about all I have for now, so.
All right, without objection, we adjourn.
Oh, objection. Item number 12, closed session.
Well, okay. Do we have closed session? Excellent. We have objection to closing, so we're going to go to item number 12.
Yes.
I will read it in. This is a possible motion to enter into a closed session for the purchase, exchange, or lease of property pending or reasonably imminent litigation, the character, professional competence, the deployment of security personnel, devices, or systems, or the physical or mental health of an individual. I will entertain a motion. Or into.
I move that we enter into a closed session.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Is there a question on the motion?
Is there a chair for Stan? Out in the,
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Not opposed. We need to turn off the recording. You're
Almost wanted to get out of here. Still daylight out. Look at that.